There it goes. Okay. Give me 1 second. Awesome. Here. Thanks everybody for coming. Thanks. Making sure this is going. Yeah. Okay. So we're set. Thanks for the Empowa guys for showing up. This is our round 2 of making this happen because the first time my stuff was not set up properly, but we're here to talk about the Empowa launch, some sustainability, and RealFi in crypto, because that's really the most exciting thing, I think, in crypto land right now. So let's get right into it and introduce them. So Glenn, you want to give you a little introduction of yourself?
Sure. First, Maria, do you
oh, sure. Okay, Maria, go ahead. I was just going in order. You're the first one on the screen for me.
No
Perfect.
problem.
Go ahead, Maria.
Whatever works. In RealFi, you need to be practical, but let me go first. So my name is Marie Zanders. I'm head of property partnerships at Empowa, and I have a background of 20 plus years on improving delivery of affordable housing throughout the world, including in Africa, as a consultant, as an entrepreneur, and now as part of this whole new world. So it's pretty exciting.
I think so, yeah. All right, go ahead, Glenn.
So my name's Glenn Jordan, co-founder of I'm a noob to the blockchain and crypto space, but really been in impact and using technology for impact for also like 20 odd years. Focused on different uses of technology to solve world problems. And really came into this space. It's quite ironic, neither a housing expert nor a blockchain expert, but as both of these as tools to create wealth, which is and improve living conditions, which is we're seeking to do in a massive way in the developing world.
I think there's a great word you just used there too, to create wealth, but like there's many different versions of what that means to different people. You know, wealth can just be having a great living situation or great relationships around you. It doesn't necessarily mean financial wealth, right? So I think that's kind of like an important thing to mention.
Absolutely. A home for most is hugely wealthy. It improves living conditions almost beyond measure, the impact that it has on lives. You know, you can imagine being without a roof, without a permanent roof over your head, to live in conditions without security. If you just close your eyes for 2 minutes and just think about the implications of that. We're so used to living and not living like that ourselves that it becomes really challenging to think like that and to think of the implications of that and what that means in your life.
And the shocking thing of actually the lack of affordable and quality housing in Africa, you know, in Africa, roughly at least 60% of the cities are slum-like conditions in Africa. Everyone who's traveled around in Africa has seen it and takes that as a fact. But the shocking thing, and that's actually part of the wealth creation path we want to generate, make more possible for all as Empowa, is that people live in an informal bad condition, but don't become part of the real economy, the formal economy. They can't treat their house as an asset because it's not registered. They're not registered, but they pay enormously for it.
Yeah.
I've been involved in low income housing, which is cheaper, the higher quality housing, which is per month cheaper than what slum dwellers are paying a kilometer further on the beach on an area that gets flooded every month, you know? So people think that those conditions are such in those slums because people are poor and can't afford to pay better, but it's not. They pay loads. And with that money and the tools we now have that are being generated by this whole new world of which we're part now through these blockchain-based tools and everything that's associated with it, you can actually give people an identity and transfer value much easier. So,
there's a lot of that kind of stuff, especially in real estate, starting to pop up right now in crypto, and even in Cardano, there's another thing that's GoKey. Now it's not for low income like you guys are doing, but just transfer of that ownership through blockchain technology and NFTs. Now it's hard to get that in, to have the legal regulators in each area accept that as the deed. But the thing is people are trying, and usually it'll eventually happen. So, and it's not just one project. That's just the one I know about right now. And that's pretty exciting. So I think this is a really good time to more so talk about what you guys do. What's the mission of the Empowa project? What's the goal? How are you going to achieve that? And then we can talk about your raise a little bit and how that's going on.
Sure. So our whole objective is to create a platform that enables funding to flow into where it's needed most, which is exactly what we're talking about. Because just as Maria Diehl said, the whole thing is around, the assumption is it's poverty. The assumption it's poverty. It doesn't. It's costs to be poor. It's not a lack of money. It's actually a lack of the infrastructure that enables that money to get to the right places. It's as simple as that. So the financial systems, the legal systems, all of these structures don't work properly. They don't work for poor people. It's as simple as that. So the objective here is to find ways that we can make sure that the people on the ground who need it most have access to funding in a decentralized manner without the systems and processes that have prevented that from happening in the first place. And that's really what we're seeking to achieve. So we know we've taken off, we've bitten off a big chunk here. We know that, we understand that. Yeah. It's ambitious. But it's necessary. Somebody, exactly as you're saying, somebody's got to try this. We've got to attempt this. We've got to see how we can make this work. Yeah. And the decentralization is the strength of it. Centralized systems have failed. It's as simple as that. Centralization has failed. Centralized decision-making has failed. So we have to find ways that we can get through that, and we can cut through that, and we can build from the bottom up instead of from the top down.
Yeah, I think the ambition is totally fine, especially in the blockchain space that we're at with Cardano. I mean, Cardano's main mission is incredibly ambitious on all fronts. Like its ambition to create a brand new coding language just to make things better for projects like yourselves and my own. And the ambition to try and, bank the unbanked like they're talking about, or even World Mobile's connect the unconnected. It's all things that have never been done that face huge infrastructural change that nobody ever wants to tackle. But for some reason, us crazy people got into blockchain and thought that could work. And here we are, and we're pushing it through. But I think the main thing is the community based around it. Like we're talking about the main mission that all these people have come across for. And that's a huge one. That's the main thing for me, is just that community creates this want to make that happen. And so the motivation is higher, especially for me, it is anyway, to manage those processes and get through my daily bout of meetings all the time. I work way more than I usually would at a normal job, but I'm actually way more happy to do it. So totally different.
Yeah.
Tricks are us in the chat says, what about partnership? Empowa has no need for oracles as far as I know at the moment. So there is no partnership. We just really like the project and wanted to talk with them. So that's where we're at. Yeah, Marie, I'd love to hear more your thoughts, because you have this really long history within, affordable housing projects and stuff, especially on the ground, and how you're looking at bringing crypto into this. Now this is RealFi, right? They're one of the only projects I would say in Cardano that's actually doing RealFi. And for those who don't know, it's just basically using crypto in real life processes into, bump my table, legacy systems and stuff. Your regular interactions are with crypto instead of banks, basically. So what's your thought process on how that's progressing?
Yeah, well, it's giving me a lot of hope for the future, where we live in uncertain times with major problems. But what's giving me a lot of confidence that everything that was always stopping whatever I was involved in with developing policies, but I've been mostly involved with entrepreneurs on the ground, and everything that was always holding it back were centralized systems.
Right.
Most countries on the African continent just don't function because of, well, let me put the word out there. There's corruption, but what's corruption? That's actually misuse of centralized power.
Yeah, Rudo just talked about corruption in the chat. He's another YouTuber, guys, so he's listening in. But yeah, it's funny you just said it. So keep going. Yeah.
And of course, and we've referred to it already, that there's huge impact to be made. To in our mission, we want to provide better homes, but also I think we fit in very well with the broader Cardano mission of democratizing access to all kinds of services and wealth creation. And that's just an enormous market in Africa. If you let me focus now specifically on my field of expertise, specifically on housing. If you now realize that the majority of housing is developed by African families themselves because they're not part of the system, because the system fails them, and again, to go back to what excites me and why, well, I think I'm not just a dreamer, but I really think we can do this and make major strides forward in the next couple of years. Is that these decentralized systems are scalable and provide exactly the solutions that hold back rolling out affordable housing. Why have formerly affordable housing projects gone wrong? It's because because the need is so big, then these massive projects are launched, which and then corruption and other inefficiencies creep in. Again, the beauty of decentralization is that value transfer can happen very efficiently at lower volume. So you can actually test what the market really wants at a smaller scale, and then incredibly fast afterwards, once you have a market client fit, scale that up. So yeah, I'm very excited about the future, and I see a very big market.
Yeah, I've seen RealFi stuff popping in many other places as well. Even sporting leagues are starting to use it. Even if we talk down to, it doesn't always have to be DeFi, NFTs and stuff. Just coming up to say, ticketing. I mean, that's RealFi too. You make an NFT as a ticket to get into an event, and that's crypto. Now everything, your transactions for that are on blockchain. If you have merchandise that's now NFT based, collectible, like it's just like you guys are in the big leagues of that version. Empowa for sure is in the big leagues of that. And I bring up NFTs because I know that's a key component of your system, Glenn. And I'd love to hear more about how that fully works. What are the NFTs doing as far as making the affordable housing purchasable and buildable, basically for the people.
Yeah, and thanks. As Maria Deal has said, the whole thing around it is it's a market opportunity. So while we have significant impact, we're actually looking at providing returns, because that's the only way that we're going to liberate the quantity of capital that's required to provide solutions at the kind of scale that we're looking at. So really what the NFT is that it's the rights, it gives you the rights to the returns from the loan effectively. So enabling that to be, because one of the greatest problems with housing is the term. If you invest into a project in Africa, a housing project, normally you're trapped for 20 years. So the NFT allows us to provide us both the proportionality and the liquidity of being able to be able to transfer that cheaply and efficiently, as well as for the funds to flow efficiently. Because again, one of the big things when you talk about large projects is then you've got the audits and the fund flows and the tracking of that. So they're always, shipping in consultants from big firms that cost huge amounts of money from central, from developed countries that are funding this kind of thing. So it's always overhead that you're adding to this and that cost is pushed onto the end consumer, which makes it completely unaffordable at the end of the day. So that's why we're talking about the efficiencies of being able to monitor that flow, and then for those flows to be able to follow that NFT, which provides the liquidity, so we can trade that and provide that. So our whole objective is to utilize the NFT to create as much value as we can, where there is funding available,
right?
Without having to extract it from the ground, without making it billable effectively to the person on the ground. So how do we create as much value in return without extracting that, without in a being sustainable, but without extracting it, because the current interest rates, as you know, are sort of 25 to 45%.
Non-sustainable is what they are, is what I say. So I don't think
exactly.
this entire system is sustainable, really. I mean, hence the decentralization of it, right? So you can push it around to more people. I mean, less points of failure is what I say. I mean, it's interesting I say that because, you say more people and then less points of failure. And it's just basically what I mean is that there's less onus on one person, right? There's less potential failure from one point. And now it's spread over a longer or a wider distance, so I mean, it's more of a hive mind situation instead of a singular. And I think for these sort of situations, that works out way better and more sustainable. And you get the impact of far more people instead of just a singular. So it speaks to everybody instead of one person.
And you get out of a very negative trap that is there now, as Glenn was detailing, that there's a lot of when a new market is being explored, and in most countries in Africa, affordable housing is still a new market because the intended audience, although they are not the poorest of the poor, these are people who earn an income and could afford a house if it's being offered at normal rates. Let me keep stressing that these people can pay, but because they mostly live informally, there's very little data. So the benefit in capturing that data and giving these people, enabling these people to have an identity helps de-risk them, because the trap they're actually in, because they're informal and there's no formal data on them or in the government systems, they're seen as high risk. There's a lot of perceived risks, which inflates the interest prices and which brings in even more outsiders to help de-risk it. And again, with every visit, the price goes up. So it's that vicious circle of giving trust by bringing in centralized and far away people, and decentralization and putting that on the blockchain and giving informal people an identity is the solution to making it more, to break through and bring down that expensive informality.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you talk about that circle. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about that circle of I call it a circle of greed personally, as it goes up, right? Because it's just one. It's all kind of going back to one person or one corporation at the end of the day, and that's not ideal, like you said. So I don't know, like, how do you move out of that? And your solution is obviously one great way of managing that, and especially for low income people, it just makes it worse and worse and worse. And I know one of our viewers right now, the guy is he lives in South Africa, and I'm sure he sees this kind of stuff all the time, especially with the gap between the what's the word I'm looking for? Racial gap, especially down there from everything. I know it's a country that suffered from apartheid and everything, and that still exists in everyday life. And if Bruto, if you want to say something in the chat about it, that would be great, and we can talk about it, because I think you're the only one that has that firsthand experience out of the people in chat. Obviously, Marie and Glenn know it more than enough, for sure.
But Damon, just to give you a sense of that, the research, just what we've been talking about. Yeah. In the squatter camp in Hart Bay in Cape Town in South Africa, which literally is a wonderful Hart Bay is a wonderful microcosm, because it literally represents that racial stroke global disparity, because you've got slums in the middle of an area that is non-slum, and literally it's 300 meters apart. So and the rental in the informal sector was between 7 and 11 times higher per square meter than 300 meters away in the formal sector.
That's horrendous.
It's so, so obviously it's the poverty. It costs money to be poor. And that's exactly it. So to see that and live with it, and you go, but that doesn't make any sense. And when you present that to the financial institutions, they go, your research is wrong. something's wrong. It's illogical. It's illogical.
It is very much so. And just like, how do you get away from that? Like, do you guys think that maybe that's the situation that's come that way from not having the same, wealth in certain areas, or it's more just that it's selected in what, like, I'm just thinking from the, the Western point of view here, that, that doesn't happen. Not to say we don't have poor and income housing and stuff, but it's generally the poorer places are cheaper. It doesn't cost to be poor. It's you kind of create that for yourself sometimes. But in these situations that you're talking about, it's like there's no choice, right? Like you can't get out of it because of that. Marie, yeah, go ahead. I can see you like you're chomping at the bit here.
And sometimes, because we just don't know that so much in rich countries, I sometimes compare it to when, if one was studying, that's a reference I have in my life, that during my study times, if you would have an illegal sublet, and your landlord could then exploit you in any way, kick you out or ask X number months of deposits because it's an illegal sublet, so that's a whole shady environment. And that's exactly also the case with poor informal environments in continents such as Africa, that the status quo works for the happy few. They have no, at the end of the day, but now we maybe hit a risky topic. It's political. How the systems work for some and exclude the many, and there's a status quo, and it's very difficult to change.
Right.
But
yeah, I mean, Rudo talks about here, and he said wealth gap, and like I agree, and the wealth gap kind of exists everywhere. It just seems far more extreme in these areas that you're talking about, right? It's bad. True. And I mean, I shouldn't apologize for this, but I know the apartheid model was built on our model in Canada for how we suppress Indigenous folks here. So it's just to far more greater effect in that area in a shorter period of time. And I know that it's created that. And I just wonder if it's a cultural thing at this point, or like a really long-standing infrastructural problem, or both. Like, what do you guys think? You're the boots on the ground.
I absolutely think it's both. And I think the issue around it is that systems work. And if you think about it, it just makes complete sense. When the system is created, it's created in an environment that works. So you have, for example, title deed systems when transfers are done by attorneys who have to go through that process. So the whole transfer process is incredibly expensive, as to transfer land. So, but it works. But it works if you've got money. Now, as soon as you get to somebody who can't afford those transfer fees, what happens? Immediately, they do it. They can't afford the transfer duties and the transfer fees, so they do it on the quiet. So they go illegal. And so immediately they're out of the system. So all of a sudden, you now have a title deed and you've had 3 transfers and you've lost the value of the property because you've lost the formality of it. So It ends up being both. So it creates the system of, and once you're excluded from the system, you're excluded from the system. So, and that's due to cost and due to structures and the banking system. To defend the banks, also, they have to deal with all these legislations now and processes and things, capital requirements and all of these issues. So when they go, it's risky to go into this market. It's just too risky. It's just, we're making enough profits at the markets we've got. Why go into markets that are risky? So there's that element to it. So, that's in their defense. So the reality is that actually, if you're outside the system, not many people care about you when you're outside the system. It's as simple as that. Whether that's globally, in country, you're disenfranchised at the end of the day.
And the worrying thing, both worrying and exciting thing, there's 2 sides to it, but the worrying thing is that the legacy system can't deal with the scale of the issue. Even if you had good leadership that wanted to change it, I said earlier, at least 60% of the cities in Africa are living in informal condition. If you want to legalize that or bring in other infrastructure or, bringing all the people, legalize that, that's a hugely challenging venture under existing system. And again, the beauty of decentralization means there are other tools to start bringing them in and to have the value that this section of society creates. Because just because they're out of the system doesn't mean they don't create value. I mean, I've worked for many years also in India, and there was a very nice teacher I knew who at a school for relatively rich Indian kids in Mumbai did an exercise. Right. What if all the low income people in your region weren't there? Who would do your laundry? Who would be driving you? Who would be,
Yeah.
These are the key workers. So if you take all of they create wealth, they're just not being counted.
Yeah, I remember even just if you look back when the wealth gap was massive in Europe, back with the regal type of systems, you had your aristocracies and stuff, and they would always say when you go read back, it's just get rid of the poor people. We don't need them. They're dirty. It's like, yeah, but who's gonna grow all your food? Who's gonna mend your garments? Who's gonna do everything that gives you the life that you want? Like, they don't realize that. I think maybe it's this weird cognitive dissonance baloney that people can't sit in reality once they're used to a certain system, and going back to what you're talking about, Glenn, too, of thinking about if you're homeless, like that's like my biggest fear in life for whatever reason. I just don't think I'd make it if that was the case, just not having those basics, to human life, water, shelter, and that's really about it. Clothing, I guess, would be another one. But I just, it scares the hell out of me to the point where I kind of lose my words. And I know there's other people living in that every day, and some people cope better than others. But you're talking about this transfer of deed titles and the wealth included in that, and how that has to actually happen, especially in the areas that you're in. So, like, what areas is Empowa starting their operations in right now, and like what kind of challenges have you faced with the legal regulations around that? Like, how are you managing to try and make this ownership of these properties legal in those areas? I mean,
Marie, do you want to kick off?
Well, first of all, Empowa doesn't develop properties itself. We work with local partners that are well embedded and work in strong partnerships locally, because especially in the field of affordable housing, you need to have, you need to first of all know your market, and you need to also have a good relationship with local government. So they find solutions that are tailored to their specific needs. In the way the land legality and land registration is being handled is different per country. Like in South Africa, Glenn can speak more to that because he's actually in South Africa now. He's an expert on South Africa also, but there it's the majority is private ownership, and in a country like Mozambique, all ownership, all land is publicly owned, is owned by the state. Of course, there's a huge informal private market there, but we don't, as Empowa, we look and we have big plans also to help support the development of strong local to support emerging partners. They deal with that in line with the local law, cultural norms, so that, because the biggest challenge actually we face is to you can have grand ideas and you can think what people want, but at the end of, and you can think also, because the need for housing is so big that poor people will accept whatever is offered to them, but because they have so little means, they have means but it's little, they're very critical customers. So the biggest challenge is to have a good house offer market match. That's not impossible, but I guess you yourself have seen also housing projects fail wherever you live. Certain housing types are just not appealing and are being broken down not long after construction, unfortunately. So that's a huge risk we have, especially because there's a lot of people talking and thinking about housing, but there's very few people active on the ground doing the delivery of housing. There's a need for better homes of at least 50 million homes in the whole of Africa. And currently outside of South Africa, in South Africa, it's relatively, the housing market across all income ranges relative to the rest of Africa is more or less okay. But outside of South Africa, there's only a handful of developers developing affordable housing.
And like, I guess, man, there's a huge like extra topic in this that I'm sure we could go on for days about, is just the resources to actually build that housing. I'm not talking about wealth. I mean like physical resources, you know, where are you getting all this material from? What kind of material is it? Is it sustainably built? How expensive is it to extract? Is it extractable or is it not? You know, is it a 3D printed house out of foam and cement, or is it like actually built in sustainable ways? Like where's the wood coming from? You know, is that sustainable for the economy to actually have that import, or are you tearing down your own jungles there that also you need, you know, for other infrastructure? This insane stuff that, I mean, I don't think we'd ever get answers, but we could talk forever on it.
True, it's an endless subject, but I always say it's all opinions.
Is another thing.
It's all opinions, including mine and Glenn's, until you put it in front of an audience who will have to pay for it. So that is the first test that needs to be passed, that it's an affordable and appealing house for those that will have to pay for it. Because too often, you know, especially with regards to lower income groups, there's a whole, I would say there is an active movement, and it's usually charity funded, where there's free houses being offered. And then that doesn't have the rigor of the market attached to it. So people will move in and maybe then move through or not. But that's not scalable, because you don't know if people will pay for it. And with just grants, you're never going to build 50 million homes. But once you have the product market match, and we know we're lucky that we have that expertise within our team, and we have a pipeline of developers who have that match, then you have scalable models. And the more you have that, and the more you can learn from that, the more that can be replicated. And it has all kinds of spin-offs also. That's where innovation is also needed, and financial multipliers, because, you know, Africa is also the most climate impacted continent in the world, and it's increasingly going to be damaged, the infrastructure, including the houses, due to the increasing impact from climate change. $1 invested in good housing, climate resilient houses, saves you $10 in reconstruction. So
that's
only for that reason
big
one
gap
should
there.
invest in better housing.
Well, talking about investing in better housing here, you guys are still doing your launch for the project, which I think started like 2 days after the last time we spoke, and our podcast failed due to my audio issues and everything. But so that's still going on. However, I think so far it's been going pretty good, right?
Yeah, no, we to be honest, we're ecstatic. And really, the community has been absolutely amazing. You know, you mentioned before around the Cardano community, and what's really blown me away is, you know, so many times we've stood up historically and gone, you know, Africa always gets lumped with the Europe, Middle East, EMEA, Europe, Middle East, Africa. So you can see the ranking in that. You can see where Africa comes in. You know, it's a rounding error in most, you know, multinationals. It's always last on the list. So to have a community whereby we've been able to go and say, this is what we're seeking to achieve. Is there risk? Absolutely. Is it ambitious? Absolutely. But we know it's a journey. We're not to the moon. We're not going to, this is no Lambo stuff, but we believe that we can make a fundamental difference. And people have bought into it. And so our whole objective with the token sale was to spread it as broad as we could, and have as many people as we could, and to give access to people who wouldn't normally have access to this kind of thing. And, you know, we can proudly say we got it to we did KYC in order to make sure we were laying the correct foundations. So we did KYC on the token sale. We got over 4,500 people involved. And the smallest purchase amount was $7.50. And so for us, that's fantastic. That's what we wanted. This is what we're talking about. It's about helping people get onto this ladder. And that's really what we're seeking to do. So it's been very successful. We've raised sufficient to begin the development of the platform. And so that process is underway. The ISPO is the only bit that's still open, but I suspect that's going to close shortly the way the price is going, because we priced it at a 25 cent, but the way ADA is going at the moment, it's going to increase the speed of that. So I suspect that's coming to a close. And so we really, now it's about, shoulder to the wheel, starting the development, starting the projects, starting to develop implementing some of the real challenges that we've got, and to demonstrate our way through that. So the next phase is to look at a housing NFT sale, exactly, as you say, according to the white paper, putting that together.
That's very exciting.
So we've built the first, very exciting. So we built the first 4 homes in Mozambique. We now want to extend that to 30 and test exactly what Maria has just been talking about: the market fit, the route to market, the lease to own, the challenge, literally the value flows. How do we actually manage that? What's the legalities around that? How do we control that? Before we even have a platform, how do we actually do that so that when we build the platform, we know we're doing the right thing? Because there've been a few questions like, why would you do that pre-platform? But actually, why would you do the platform first and then discover problems? And when you've built it then the wrong way. So in fact, it's around testing, the normal kind of way. And everything that we're doing is exactly that. It's built on basic principles. It's, build it, test it, see that it works, and then we can, put it into the technology, rather than the other way around, build the tech and then have to reformat it or change the system.
Yeah, of course. I mean, a lot of projects are doing that in that way, because different processes, of course, to get going. Some people have to do the test first. I apologize if I'm being a little bit distracted here. There is a constant attack spam in our chat right now. So from like 15 different users. So I'm trying to get rid of them all at the same time. But yeah, it depends on what your platform really is. I think of being able to put the tech first, and have that ready and just hope that it works out properly, or build out your systems first and then, like you said, implement it afterwards. And I think that in your guys' case, it totally makes sense to do it that way, because then you don't have to worry if it's going to work or not. You're ready. You can show your tangible product. You know that your customers are coming in. Like we talked about, the reason that people come into these things now is a potential investment opportunity, right? And now that that's there. It's real. Like it can actually happen.
Exactly. So we're seeing it as parallel. All the time. It's one step. It's literally, because it's RealFi. So we've got to build it just actually as we did with Catalyst. Part of it was demonstrating to the real world community that blockchain community is not a bunch of, get rich quick, money launderers, and demonstrating to the crypto community that actually we've got the partnerships, the relationships to actually deliver on the ground, that this is real and this is implementable, and that we do and know and understand what we're talking about, and our partners know and understand that, and then we can bring the two together. So it's going to be this constant step, left, right kind of step as we develop.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely proper, especially when you're dealing with legacy systems in this RealFi. If we're looping it all the way back to the beginning here, is that you have to show that first, because people aren't going to be trusting. The blockchain community knows, oh yeah, of course that'll work. They know they take huge risks on things that sometimes pan out, sometimes don't. It's a lot of innovators, a lot of dreamers, but the real world system is not set up that way. It wouldn't be where it is if it was set up that way, with that kind of extra risk. And I know there's other platforms doing that too, where there was one with a chain that's kind of upcoming, that's dealing mainly with entertainment and stuff, and they have to prove that their systems work to like the musical executives and everything before they're even doing any kind of launch or marketing or anything. And it's just so it's interesting. It's a weird, like, you're doing the tech and you're testing it, but you're also not putting the tech out first. So it's like back and forth. And I think you guys have done it. Like I've been aware of your project for quite a long time, and it's very exciting that you're finally getting the launch done, getting it out, and especially when a lot of Cardano projects are starting to get ready to launch because the ecosystem's kind of already there. I mean, we're talking from the Charli3 side a lot to new projects and some of our old integrator projects that are saying, yeah, we're almost ready, and we're like, oh, thank God, finally. Like we've been going like way past our expected runway for a long time because we're just waiting on this ecosystem. But it's innovation, right? Like we can't rush it. Cardano's so different and so new that let's make sure it's done right, which I think again pulls into what we were just talking about. Make sure things work first before having the masses in there, especially for your guys' areas. You know, you really have to worry about other people and not just yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Both sides of the equation. We've got to worry about both sides of the equation, which is very important.
Perfect. So that's a good spot to try and wrap up on here, guys. What are the final things that people can go and look at? What you want to tell people, what you're up to currently right now, where the raise is happening? Your descriptions and links are in the description below, so links to your Twitter and website. But yeah, what else? What are the final messages?
I think thanks so much for your time, first of all.
Of course, yeah.
I think right now we've just actually released the first video of the first tenant who moved in from the Catalyst project. Amazing. And I would just strongly suggest that everybody just go and watch that video, and it's a reminder of what we're doing, because her words capture so beautifully, and it's such a good reminder for us who get caught up in the day-to-day and the tech and the whatever, and just to go, that's what we're doing. And just as a reminder, and just to say, we're not going to stop until we've replicated this by the 100,000. And that's the objective with what we're doing, because from her words, you just realize, wow, we cannot not do what we're trying to do. It's as simple as that. We cannot fail. We're going to have to make this work.
It's amazing that you have that case there. And yeah, absolutely. Everybody go check that out. Marie, any closing words from your side?
I fully second that. You know, these are not weak people. These are potentially paying customers who are ready to pay a fair price. And just to put some numbers, there's a sneak peek available now on our socials, but in a few days the full podcast will come out. It was in Portuguese because that's the local language of the client, so we wanted to interview them in their own language, and translation takes some time. So in a few days that will be out. But just to keep in mind, so in a country of 30 million people, that's Mozambique, these will be the first lower income families paying for affordable housing in a formal way. All the rest is informal. Mm-hmm. So that's, it's mind-boggling, the lack previous to us of the market, potential of us, and the excitement of the clients who enter those houses will underline it. But the context and the lack of housing is just, I often joke, staggering. Seriously, within our team, it's a limitless market.
Yep. No, it's continual. I mean, there's always more people being born and more houses coming up, and even just swapping out those areas that people currently live. Like we talked before, they get knocked down and have to be rebuilt, and keeping the culture in the right area to support that, I think. So I think it's been a great chat with you guys. Again, thanks for your time. Thanks for being here. As always, everyone who might be listening to this now or in the future, like I said, check out the description below. It has their website where you can read up more information on what Empowa is doing, and follow their social media for the continual updates from their platform. And obviously do the same thing for Charli3, because we also create the support, and we'll be serving most of the DeFi ecosystem in Cardano, and creating this dream that we're all going towards, and the Cardano ethos of, bank the unbanked, connect the unconnected, and just creating a great community for all, especially in crypto. So have a good day, everybody, and thanks for joining in. We see you next time. Goodbye.
Great. Thanks a lot, Damon.
Bye. Thanks, Damon.